Today it's all about data sharing. We have collected data massively. But how about sharing? How about making money of it? Looking forward. Good morning, welcome Tech TV again, and we're going to have a great discussion about data sharing. So we have been collecting data massively, and today of course it's also about how about sharing within the context of ecosystems, for example, how about sharing into terms of value journeys, but in the end, how are we going to monetize it? So today I have a serious group of tech leaders in the house. And let me introduce him as always in short. So I got Nick from BCG, I got Toon from Roseman's Labs, I got Douwe from NLP, and I got Malay from Wipro. But before we start to have this great conversation about data sharing, let's go to my buddy Ben van den Berg, and to ask him about...
Hello, Rob.
Hi Ben, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine, but I'm really disappointed.
Why are you disappointed, buddy?
I'm disappointed in data sharing because we are talking about it, about your personal fault. We talk about it for 10 years, I think now, and it's not there. I'll give you a real example. Imagine you have a mental illness and you go to a hospital and they do a research to you and they put all your data in your APD, electronic patient vault. And and then in 3 weeks, because you have a mental illness, you go to another hospital and they do the same. And 3 weeks later, you say to them, the second hospital, you are not allowed to look in my personal vault. It's not allowed. 3 weeks later, you go to the third one. It's a real case in the Netherlands. And every 3 weeks, you can do that. You will not, and I know it's a privacy issue, and you are not, you don't give access, all the doctors, to your personal vault, and then it's a lot of cost. I mean, now it's unbelievable that that's possible. So going back, you know, Tim Berners-Lee, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, he's the founder of That We Are Can Talk Now to Each Other, one of the founders of the internet, of course. And he has 3, 4, 5 years ago, he started with Solid, his initiatives, to have your personal vault, decentral, that you know, okay, this is my data, and I give you access. I don't give you access. I know who got access to my data. We are talking about it. There's an initiative in the Netherlands from different media media companies who are trying to get this out of the ground, and that we can do something. We didn't achieve that, and that's why I'm disappointed that we didn't achieve a personal vault. We didn't achieve on a proper, good manner with all the GDPR rules in place, data sharing. And that's why I'm disappointed, and I'm sure that the coming minutes that you have this program, you will solve this issue.
Well, that's a great call to action, so to speak. But I've never seen you so worried. So, but
No.
to wrap it up, we will discuss this, of course. Did you read the book already? Yep.
I read it. It took me a whole night. And on the one side, okay, that's nice. We are now in the tech world. I mean, the dedication and go for it, and that you want to achieve something. That's really nice. And because of that, that's the one side. There are a lot of flaws that you are, the flaws that you're not going on the right way. How you deal with people, but when we are now in the call, and everyone who's looking, when we have a little bit more balance than Elon Musk, I'm sure, can achieve the same as Elon Musk can achieve. And I know only one person can be the richest man, but that's not the most important thing. But that we making the digital world a little bit better, nicer, more effective, more inclusive, etc. That's what we aim for. And he did it, and we will do it also.
All right, thanks. Great, buddy. Thank you. I will take it from here.
Thank you. Have
Bye,
a nice
Ben.
day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, he's disappointing. So let's bring that up to the first reaction, right? He's disappointing. So what do we do with that?
I share his concern. I have also a very practical use case. I'm in the process of buying a house and applying for a mortgage, and you cannot imagine how much institutions I need to connect with each other, and connecting means downloading, printing, emailing, a lot of paper flows getting along. Well, it's actually my data that sits at the tax authority, that sits in my bank accounts, and I now really work in this digital age with screenshots, with prints, so I share Ben's concern. I think we're having a lot of technological possibilities of today, but if you see the actual use cases, they're still lacking behind. So I'd love to understand also, together with this real group of experts, what are now the inhibiting factors why we don't unlock the full potential of data sharing yet.
Yep. Well, let's go directly into that, right? So setting the scene, Nick, you always, as BCG, got that great insights on. So let's create this insight on data sharing.
And for that, I think I took one page with me because it's not that we have to come from absolutely nowhere. There are actually good things happening, and there are also good use cases. So let's also try to have the glass a little bit more half full than I think Ben started in the beginning with, because I think we also have, especially here today, some thought leaders in the room that are experimenting with this domain in different ways. I think you'll hear Toon talk about how the power of technology can unlock some of the challenges that Ben was bringing. So on this page, you would see multiple examples on how you can actually go about data sharing. And so technology can be one particular direction. I think Douwe will talk about how can you do this in conjunctions with others, maybe not solely technology, but in a concept what we call trust frameworks. I think also we heard Rieper talking about the use of big data formats and APIs and how in organizations you can use data. Standard formatting, like standardization institutes like ISO, are also mechanisms to foster it. So when we were doing a small preparation for this session, there are actually mechanisms how you can share data today.
Right.
But still, it's not happening at the scale of Ben's mental illness example, my house or mortgage application process. So let that be the focus of today, and I think we would have a good session if we can solve a couple of those inhibiting factors and really accelerate forward based on this conversation.
Right. Let's do that. So a quick response, glass half full or half empty in regarding data sharing?
Half full.
Half full, why?
It's possible today. It's just a matter of doing.
It's a matter of doing.
Half full, it's a journey. We only have just begun. But recognize, of course, Ben's experience and the symptoms which he addresses.
Right. That's a great word. The symptoms he is addressing. Right, great.
I think certainly half full. The tech is out there. The attitude is out there. The willingness is out there. It's more about how to bring everything together to do it.
Right. All right. So let's go into in the sampling. Roosmans Lab.
Yes.
Who is, what is?
We are a startup, 25 people. Half of us are engineers and cryptographers. And we build a technology that makes it safe to share and collaborate on very, very sensitive data. We came all to the problem of, because we were passionate about privacy, because we believe that the privacy frameworks that we have, they are there for a real good reason. But we also saw, as Ben said, that you need to we have to break the paradigm. And since, I would say, 2 years, there is technology that's in academia that we could bring to the market and that could really solve this problem. So that's what we do. We have a special database technology where partners can collaborate with each other's data while retaining the control over their data. And that solves a huge barrier to collaboration. But we have to make it very simple, because to Nick's point, if it's cumbersome still, and if you don't feel you're not in control as a bank or as a hospital, then this collaboration won't take off. So it needs to be as easy as working in the real world with traditional data systems, and that's what we're working towards.
Right. So, of course, I have to congratulate you. You just had a new investment round, right?
That's correct. Thanks.
So, looking to those parties or partners behind that, can you explain? It's a rather, well, let's say, interesting mix, right?
Yeah, it is. we got selected to the Intel Ignite program, which is a deep tech accelerator based in Munich. And through that network, we came into contact with a lot of venture capital in the sort of the Munich ecosystem. What I learned is that Munich is a sort of tech hub in Europe. After London, Munich is a very, very big place where IP get filed, patents get filed, research gets done. There's a very big semicon and high-tech manufacturing industry over there. And so it's a logical place for very large German VCs to cluster. And we got introduced into that network. One of the VCs that's now behind us is Spacewalk, and their mother company is a private R&D company that combines the expertise of 800 researchers to bring to valorize technology into the German industry, AI, all kinds of robotics and so on. The other VC is a deep tech VC, one of the larger deep tech VCs in Germany, who does materials technology, hardware technology, software. And we were able to hook up and partner with VCs that understand how to sell very complex R&D heavy products to industry.
Right. So we had many discussions about this, Nick, earlier, also from the other perspective, right? So from the big enterprises, do they do enough in terms of co-creation, joint ventures, etc., right? From out of the startup and scale-up perspective. You had that worry that time, right? That we're not going fast enough to get into specifics of industry or specifics of technology use, right? How is that today?
No, I still share the same worry as we had at that time. I think companies are often approaching the problem from a angle of competitiveness. Well, I think if you standardize upon the level of infrastructure almost, then the competitiveness can be your value proposition towards your clients. But it feels that we're now getting competitive on standards or competitive on the way how we're going to approach data, and that's not helping any of us. So I think that is still a worry that I see, and I think one of the things that I think that we need to break through is trying to get away from competitiveness on standards, but much more on value propositions.
Right. So I need to touch base also on this one, Malay. So you're a big tech player, right, as Wipro. So how important is it from your perspective to build those types of relationships from an MVP perspective to a startup and scale-up perspective into joint ventures, co-creation, looking to the type of questions, type of business you will get with your customers?
I think it's very important. When we talk about data sharing, it's actually across the ecosystem. The ecosystem would have different kind of players in it. Some for having a specific skill set in delivering, say, a niche MVP, some having the capability of able to scale them up, some very much important out there who can actually help you understand the business outcome that you can drive and how to create a monetization framework. So all these partnerships are very important. What is truly important to understand is that to what extent do you invest in those partnerships, right? And where are you trying to create a niche for yourself? While we should not be competing within that ecosystem, within that partnership level, but at the same time, you need to create your own niche. I think, and from that standpoint, it's extremely critical that we decide upon where you want to lay down your chips, right, aggressively, where you want to have a moderate relationship created, and where you truly want to create a consortium. From Wipro's angle, the way we are actually looking at it, we are trying to bring the organizations to create a consortium. Now, in those consortiums, for example, we have set up a concept of data clean room, wherein the various organizations can step in and can activate to the extent that they want to participate. It's not necessary everyone to be providing a similar level of input into that consortium, but it's on their own will and how they want to extract value out of it.
So facilitating, orchestrating.
Absolutely.
Right, great. So if I take that breakdown, so in regards to use case, in regards to where are you providing, let's say, those cases, can you give an example on that?
Yeah, we are focusing on healthcare a lot because there, to Ben's point also, there's a lot of value to be created by collaborating. We have a sort of a healthcare infarct, too little capacity, too many costs. We set up a decentralized quality registry for podiatric care, which I believe is the first in the world, a federated data system where podiatry clinics can collaborate on quality of treatment with each other while they are competitors. So it's one example. I didn't know, but diabetic foot wound in the Netherlands costs the taxpayer €500 million a year.
Right.
Because these wounds are very deep. They sometimes toes need to be amputated or legs need to be amputated. So these are highly expensive treatments. The podiatry clinics get funded out of the public insurance to prevent these foot wounds, but they need to substantiate why their preventative treatment is effective.
Right.
One diabetic patient has 16 care providers around him. So 16 data silos, and we need to connect those data silos to show what is effective treatment and to improve treatment effectiveness and reduce costs. This is one case alone. We just launched it a few months ago. It's public. Yeah, it is a federated quality registry for healthcare, which is, I think, could be a really good future.
Right. So, but at the other side, and how do you look then from the perspective of the government, so to speak, so the inhabitants, right? So we still see a lot of discussion. We're going from 100 billion to 200 billion in the next 7-8 years in terms of cost, right? Probably will have a decreasing national gross product, right? So that's the other fault now. So, but are we making, from a governmental perspective, also enough pace?
Yeah, I think we don't need to change the GDPR, in my opinion. I think we need to understand that it's possible today. There are now technologies like data clean rooms or our technology multi-party computation to put the right safeguards in place. Right. And now I think the role of the government is to drive adoption. I would say stop experimenting, but really start driving real cases, real customers, give them. In Singapore, the Singapore government funds, I believe, 30 or 50% of any public or private implementation of a privacy technology, just to get the wheel going. I think we're at that stage. We don't need super large research budgets anymore or sort of pilot projects funded by the government. It needs to be real cases that show that we can build a decentralized quality registry or something else. And I think I see that the government is really willing to adopt privacy-enhancing technologies. The NIC-PET got recently launched, which is a center of excellence about these technologies. But I think there's still sort of, there's more to be done. The word needs to go out. The technology is new. Data clean rooms and multi-party computation is new. We just have to spread the word. Right. And the government can be a big part.
Right. In the context of this. The geos, let's say, right? So you're referring to Singapore. So are we lacking behind as Europe and especially the Netherlands? Big?
I think if we are talking about lacking behind, I think we are definitely lacking behind on value realization through data sharing. I think if you for example look to Singapore, but even Southeast Asia, which is I think one of the best practice examples, I think they are one step further ahead. I think one of the things that we often do and will be in one of the future Tech TV sessions is the CIO of the Year election, where we use the digital acceleration framework. Also there Singapore has said every organization we will pay for a benchmark to show how good you are performing compared to last year. So there are governmental initiatives to really drive and foster that type of adoption. But also if you look to countries like Indonesia, China, Japan, I think they are a little bit further with the uses of those technologies. Yeah.
Right. Do you see the same now? You operate global, right? So
Yeah, I think we are advanced in the Netherlands, but it says more about the rest than about Netherlands. Right. So there is such a long scope to go. But it's also a collective awareness journey, and that's with data and data sharing, and so it takes way longer than I think we as innovative people anticipate. But over the years we learn to become patient on that. And with GDPR and all these regulations, there's a lot of noise in the regulation. And if you really want to pin it down to the first principles or to the real signal in those regulations, then it's all about having control on your data. Right. And yes, GDPR gives us all the rights, but the regulators forgot to specify the means. Like we all have a car, but the regulators provide a road. Yeah. And we sort of forgot to design the road to transport our data, to reuse our data somewhere else. And the result is that all the companies are compliant, and we are confronted with clicking all the time, and we still have no control on our data today. And that's exactly what Ben is addressing. And I think it can be solved if we would be more principle-based in terms of regulation, because the regulations are so long.
Right.
But if you really think it through and make this journey a couple of years, then you can reduce the number of letters needed to make a regulation.
Right.
And let us all figure it out, because we have the road and we know how to make cars, and medium cars and very nice cars, right? And they all have the steering wheel on the same side. They all we all know how they work. So that's
Great. I will circle back on InnoPay, of course. Now, just to finish up, you're actually also advertising or asking the market to say, come with your questions and we will work with that, right? So just show a little show of Roseman's Labs.
My name is Freya de Mink. I'm responsible for business development at the Roseman Labs. Roseman Labs is on a mission to transform the way companies work with sensitive data. And we have a software solution that provides parties to collaborate on data without disclosing or sharing their source data. And we use this with healthcare companies who want to compare treatment outcomes or work on new solutions. And my invitation to anyone in the medtech community is to come up with challenges where they would like to collaborate on data from devices or across organizations so that we can discuss how we may be able to solve this challenge.
I like this approach. Is this helpful? Is this meaningful?
Yeah, I think we are saying, we're here to help. We also, when we support our customers, you buy the technology and the support by our team is free. So if we need to be there 10 meetings with your compliance officer or 20, that's okay. And I think that's what's needed. So we are extending our hand and we're saying we're here to help. We know how to go. We just onboarded the municipality of Rotterdam. And of course there are over 10 meetings about compliance. You meet the security officer multiple times. You meet the architects, the data management teams. And I think we learn a lot from those. We have done now 10, 12-ish cases. So we've been through this journey 10, 12 times, and it's templated. We know how to go through this. So we extended our hand, say, come to us, and we walk you through this path.
Right. Is this the way to emphasize and create much more MVPing as a kind of a seeding? Let's seed innovation. Let's seed try and fail fast, perhaps also. But is this the gear into?
I think so. I think you do need a couple of use cases in a particular market, in a particular niche. There proves it to be successful, and then scale it. Maybe one book recommendation for people listening. There's a book called Crossing the Chasm, which I think is really about finding a niche in a particular market and then making that successful and then passporting it to others. I think if we're trying to go too broad or too many experiments or too many research funds, then you stick small. At a certain moment, you do need a bit of adoption or critical mass to get the network effect going.
Right. I probably can guess that this is a trend you're also anticipating on as Wipro, right?
Yeah.
Again, facilitating.
Exactly. It is about that, but as been mentioned, I think it's important that we've identified that first use case, determine the success criteria that you want to, show the success, and then translate it, replicate it, educate it, and also create that awareness. I think the biggest challenge that at least we are seeing from a Wipro standpoint is that it's all about adoption and the change management. Because when you're sharing the data, you're sharing it across the ecosystem, sharing across various people. And what you need to ensure is that everybody is onto the same page. They all buy into the idea of why you are doing it, for what reason you are doing it. And then another thing that we are also seeing is that when we go with these kind of MVPs, when we go with this kind of facilitating and orchestrating kind of a situation, the organizations struggle to have the right business architecture in place, not the technical architecture, but the business architecture in place. What capabilities are needed, right? When you're talking to the data management team, the compliance team, they would be interested to see that to meet my requirement, are those capabilities inbuilt into your data sharing solutions, right? And that is a business architecture. It's not technology. It's not about just technology.
Right. Great. Douwe, InnoPay. So what are you doing, guys?
Yeah, we are a consulting firm, about 50 professionals in Amsterdam and in Frankfurt. And we fell in the rabbit hole of digital transactions. About 20 years ago, it started with payment. That's why we called Pay. But if I would restart the company now, I would not call it Pay, somewhere, but more generic maybe. But we help banks, other financial institutions, pension funds, insurance companies, but also government, and now more and more other industries with the whole transactional side of their business, which is data sharing, which is payment, which is also digital identity. I hope this gives an impression.
Right. Yeah, no, but let's go to Moody of InnoPay, because I think it reflects also your strategy and your ambitions, right? Much more in rep. So let's see. I think that gives a good flavor, right?
Yeah, it does. It's our call out for digital sustainability.
Right.
Because there is eco-sustainability, but we believe the digital world has also a mission to be more sustainable. And sustainable we mean by empowering your customers, your suppliers, your employees, all your important stakeholders, to allow them to see, to manage, and to reshare their data somewhere else. And that's really a principle.
Right.
Which, if we would all do this, then we would automatically create the means and the highway we would have to make our asset, because it's data about ourselves and about companies of ourselves, you could reuse somewhere else, and you could capture more value out of that. Right. So, yeah. So this really took a long time to make such a script, indeed, but we condensed it very much.
Yeah, that's a good one. Right?
And now, just on the whole data sharing part, or on the whole transactional part, I think approximately 10 years ago we were in the neighborhood of where we are currently having this recording, working on a data sharing project with people and data in control. We're now almost a decade further, and yes, we need to be patient, and I got also much more patient over the years, but it still itches with me that I think 10 years ago we were really trying to be innovative here. And if you now look to the real use case examples, there are not too many real life. What are your top 1, 2, 3 elements that you think that are inhibiting us, that we are only have moved a little bit since our cool journey 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day it boils down to individuals in a leadership position taking the next step. And over the years I learned that people who really want to take the next step is about 1 or 2% of the population. People talking about doing the next step, well, that's a way bigger part, and that's the noise everywhere. Everybody talks about it, but if you really pin it down, do you really mean you want to be sustainable? Do you really want to do something about it? That is a very limited amount of people so far. And then there is the game theory in the end, because when you're in a leadership position and you have your stakeholders, your board, to what extent do you feel responsible for advancing this sort of public thinking? It's like, who is responsible for the world peace, right? Everybody likes world peace, but nobody wants to take the first step. So over the years, this I remember vividly that we were working on this, and over the years, this is sort of my assessment. And then the only way is finding the lining up the galaxy of people who can make it happen. And one positive example, and sort of it happened 20 years ago when Ideal happened, because Ideal is electronic payment is a data sharing exercise. I didn't realize it back then, but after having seeing it develop, it was a proof for me at least that you can do data sharing by creating an ecosystem and have a service which is meaningful for everybody. And everybody thinks it's a centralized platform and everything, but it's not. And it's an ecosystem. And that was only a leadership of 2 or 3 people who said,
Right.
okay, we want to make this happen, and then organize it and put up the resources. So it's these pockets of things, and that's why Ben also alluded to this initiative of Data Cloud, which is the media companies wanting to do that. In potentially, that could be a similar moment 10 years later, because if indeed these companies do also what they say and they put up the resources, then it is feasible.
Right. So I read your book about everything transaction, right? So and I see the concept of saying that data sharing could be seen as a transaction, right? So that's a concept-wise, right? Is that a kind of an accelerator we need?
I think that's the way how you think about the world. I think if you say, to Douwe's point, 10 years ago, we thought that doing a payment is actually somebody taking money, walking to the other side and handing it over. But it's actually a secure way of making messages from one place to another that you can trust. I think that's the whole concept where the trust framework thinking of InnoPay actually came into existence. So that's what I love to understand also from Douwe as well. I think we heard talking about technology. I think Wipro on technology and Cleanroom. Are there other concepts that you need to have in place in order to make data sharing work?
Right.
No.
I can take one angle, because while setting up these consortia, there's always like the paperwork. And I think it's good for many to know of these consortia that it's actually not reinventing a rocket. Right? Everybody wants to have control over what happens with the pooled data, like publication rights. You have all these sort of legal clauses. How is the sustainable funding of a data space or a data consortium taken care of? There's a few models, and there's a few dominant models as well. So I think when you set up the consortium, either there's one strong orchestrator, he sets the guardrails and the rules, and then it's easy, everybody onboards on those rules, or they need to sort of hash it out together, and it takes 9 months longer. Mm-hmm. But I think sort of there's only a limited set of, you could say, or there is a limited set of templates that you could say, let's run the consortium like this. Is it a research consortium, or is it a consortium among competitors? And I think there, it's not that it's super hard and it's never been done before. People need to just put it on the table, I think.
But isn't that I think one of the problems today within our industry? So we are looking to value, right? So suddenly you see hypes. For example, let's take AI, right? Okay, let's move there. Let's take it. But the fundamentals, like making indeed principal agreements and frameworks and real guides in terms of data sharing, are a total lack of, right? Is that a thing? What's happening today in this age where we are with this big tech push on value?
Well, it's still siloed. Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's very siloed even today, and every time you have to build a consortium, and that creates a new silo in itself. And so what I learned from the financial world, because that's where we do a lot of work, is that you can standardize also legally in a way that it scales over the whole planet actually.
Right.
But let's say for the Netherlands in this case, they all have agreements, and then this many-to-many problem is solved. That means that anyone can pay somebody else who is part of this whole ecosystem. And so next to technological standardization, you also need standardization on a legal way, but also on the usage way, because the way a payment works is also sort of similar. The way a card payment works is similar all over the world. That helps also for standardization, because then you can easily switch from service provider. And a major example is from another sector, is on the telecom sector, because telephony is also a trust framework, because there is technological standards, but you can also just use somebody else's network, and that party gets paid on the back, which is also again legal harmonization, and that has proven an extremely scalable model. And it was invented just prior to our digital age that we knew today, because it was the end of the 80s, where some visionary people thought, okay, let's not centralize telecoms, but decentralize it, and that became the dominant model.
Right.
And we find it very normal that we keep our number when we switch provider. Whereas in the digital age, we cannot switch providers because we all have an identity within a certain platform. Yeah. And we sort of find that normal.
Yeah, right.
And so it's this realization that you cannot call from WhatsApp to Telegram, which we will find normal, which is not.
Yeah, I agree. Reflect on that one.
Yeah, I think, Rob, you brought up a good point that everybody is running behind that value. But value is, I think it's important to demystify that word itself. What do you mean by a value out here? Are you talking about doing data sharing to drive process efficiencies? Are you talking about to do some monetization? Are you talking about saving lives? Are you talking really about just creating a niche out there, right? So what exactly is the objective? And that is the definition of value one should really tack to. Second, I think you were referring to that, there are concepts out there which now can enable data sharing. And why things have actually not progressed in last 10 years, as the frustration you showed, a lot is also depending upon that. Do you really, first of all, understand your own data? Have you tagged it the right way? Do you know what you would want to share? Do you know who is the owner of that data? What is the quality of that data? These are some very fundamental problems with which organizations are still struggling.
Right.
And then comes that point of data sharing. Because if you are not able to have a control on some of these aspects, then your data sharing will not be able to deliver the value that you expect.
Yeah.
So
I think it's also an element of risk appetite in ambition, etc. Right? So let's bring a little dimension to this extra. Is my buddy from Dubai there, Fengi? He's only by voice. Hey, Fengi.
No, I'm right here. Hey, Rob.
Hey, Fengi, how are you?
Excellent. Thank you very much.
All right, we're talking about value. We're talking about tech hypes, right? And I always loved our conversations when I was in Dubai with you. So what is the status on those hypes like AI and making money, monetizing tech in the Middle East, so to speak? Is it a different culture than we do in EMEA, right? In Europe?
Yeah. So good morning to all of you. I saw some lovely guests out there. So hello and. Salam alaikum, like they say in this part of the world. So, yes, lots has been happening, Rob. India, the UAE. So in my new avatar, I've been spending quite a bit of time in India as well, advising marquee clients in the education sector and in the technology sector. And I must tell you that, on the tech frontier, countries like India, we are not just talking about a technological leap. We are actually embarking on a profound societal revolution. So for if you talk to people in India, if you talk to the corporate leaders, if you talk to the movers and shakers, they don't believe AI is a tool. They genuinely believe that AI is going to reshape the way we're going to work, reshape the way organizations are going to think in terms of going to market, reshape the way organizations are going to launch their products. Not only in terms of time, but even in terms of consumer preferences. So that is a massive change, even in a country like India, where, for example, one of the biggest examples was the UPI, which is the payment interface that the country is following, started about 5 years back. And today we have 1 billion transactions going through it every month. So that's massive, right? Dubai, for example, at the country level, they have done some marvelous things, right? So Dubai's digital strategy, for example, is to digitize all aspects of life in Dubai, establishing a reliable and robust digital system that will enhance the digital economy. So clearly for them, the citizen is at the center of their digital transformation universe. So anything they do at the country level has to transform the life of a citizen for better terms. So whether it is paying your bills, whether it is completing a government transaction, whether it is moving houses, whether it's paying your electricity bill, Dubai is very, very clearly going down the transformation and the AI route. And they actually have a minister for artificial intelligence who actually leads from the front, who speaks a lot of sense when it comes to embracing transformation, when it comes to saying, we want to get there. So Dubai is hungry. Dubai is desiring to be the top, get there, and make sure that, they are front runners. And from what we have seen so far, they absolutely are. They are embracing technology in every aspect of their life. They are, in fact, planning to go paperless in a few years. So that's a massive step. So Dubai is embracing it. And, when you land in Dubai, from the airport to you checking into the hotel and then going about your transactions, you will realize that there is a very clean, a seamless, a very smooth digital transaction interface that makes your life better. And for me, that is a massive transformation.
That brings me to the prime question here in the discussion we are having about data sharing, right? And of course, we are talking about regulations and government and ecosystem. So the concept of data sharing, if you take that from that perspective of Middle East, right, or Dubai or India, it's a non-discussion.
So, no, we can discuss, but the reality is in countries like UAE and India, they're very, very specific, very, very particular about how and where they want to share the data. So it has become very, very, the governments are taking it very seriously. In fact, very recently, the government of India announced a Data Privacy Act that said they will take the data that, whether it's on WhatsApp or Facebook or any other app or any other provider collecting it, will be treated with a lot of care, just like Europe started a few years back. So for India, in the UAE, a lot of companies still do not allow, especially the statutory organizations, do not allow you to place the data if you're on the cloud outside of the UAE. That problem has become easier now because a lot of big players like Oracle, SAP, Azure, Microsoft, very recently Amazon just set up their data center in UAE. So that has made it easier, but otherwise countries like UAE and India are very, very clear about how they want to handle data, and they take extra care to ensure that privacy is not compromised at all. And there are very, very strict laws in place.
We're going to elaborate on that. Last question I need to ask. I saw another great post from you, embracing love, universal imperative. Hey, come on, tell me about that.
Somebody is reading my post. Thank you very much, Rob. You know, so if you're sitting in some part of the world, anywhere, right, and you're listening to the news and you're listening to you're reading Facebook, there is so much of disagreement is fine, but there is so much of hatred. There is so much of I don't like what you're doing, I don't like you, and so on and so forth. I think genuinely, as leaders, as corporate leaders, and as good citizens, we need to embrace love in the real sense of the term. We need to be more empathetic towards what is happening, whether it's to a tourist, whether it's to your neighbor, whether it's to your community, everywhere. And I don't see that too much of that happening. We are too caught up in driving people in the corporate life to targets. We are too caught up in go-to-market strategies. We are too caught up in COVID brought about some amount of change, but I think we are kind of seem to be slipping back into the non-empathetic zone and saying, that's fine, each for himself, each for oneself, let's go and fend. I think that needs to change. Clearly, this is an universal imperative, and I think whether you are a state leader, a country leader, whether you're a corporate leader, or even running your own business, and I heard one of them saying that they are entrepreneurs, clearly people have to be at the top of it. You have to bear in mind that everybody has a story. Thank you for pulling that up. Everybody has a story, and we need to be very, very cognizant of that. And all said and done, don't let love get into the back burner. Don't let love be in the kitchen. Bring it to the living room. Put it in places where people can see it and embrace it and take charge of it. And I think we need more love.
I love that dimension also from you, Vengi. And I know I need to go to Dubai fast, right, to see you and give you a hug. Thanks, Vengi.
Thank you so much, my dear. Thank you.
So bring that back in the discussion of data sharing and embracing those new technology. Total different behavior from the eastern part.
Absolutely, I think.
What can we learn from this? What can we deal with that?
UPI, India, is a great example of how you can create a sort of a soft infrastructure, because there the financial interface and also identity interface is just one standard for whole of India, and it was already in 2016 live, and it had a matter of sort of top down. But it was just enough top-down to let the market create their ecosystems on top of it. So it's really principle-based and well analyzed. So yes.
I think it grew very rapidly, as rightly said. And being from that part of the world, I could relate to it. When I was going back to India for my vacation, visiting my family and out there, I saw a dramatic shift. Within 6 months of time frame, there was a dramatic shift. The push was so large that it automatically created that ecosystem, as said. Even the small vendors, the fruit sellers, the small vendors, which are probably selling out of a shop which is just say 3 by 3 feet, not even meters, they are having those UPI payable modes now enabled to them, right? It has brought about a dramatic change. And you started by saying that you're in the process of purchasing a house. Another example I'll give from that part of the world is where they have systems like DigiLocker, wherein you can upload a lot of your own documents, personal documents, and that are then tied back, to any of the government institutions if you go for, and you need to submit your own documents. So you are actually saving a lot of time by not being asked same question again and again from different, institutes with whom you have to deal.
Right.
So this is all about keeping the human experience at the center of it, a user experience at the center of it, and creating an ecosystem all around it to bring about the benefit. Going back to my point originally, what's the objective? One of the objectives which was driven through UPI, through DigiLocker kind of initiatives, is stakeholder experience,
right,
about the user experience.
Right.
So yeah, I think there is certainly things to be seen.
Great. I need to bring that back to you, Nick. You're always the guy, and besides the company as BCG, can explain very explicit the learning curves or the do's or the don'ts, right? So in this perspective, if we want to, so I think there's a different approach, right, happening in from India out to the Middle East, etc. Right? If they look to the discussion about value. From other stakeholder management perspective, different angles, right? You see the love story of Fengi, and I like that approach. So what are the takeaways here? What do we need to look to? Is it from a value perspective, different discussion? What?
Yeah, no, I think I like to build upon what you're saying. The experience that you design for human, for per individual, needs to be cool, flawless, digital native, I think as we call it. And then I'm going to quote Douwe, I think, who always said that credit cards were never designed for the web. Because if you are still doing a credit card payment online, you have to key in a lot of numbers. Then you have to look to the back. And then a couple of months ago, or even I think it's still months ago, you need to go to another device to put in the card, key in something different, and then go back. So it's like an experience that has never been designed for a web interface. If you look towards the Dubais of this world, they have the luxury to design their city a little bit from scratch. So I think the difficulty that you have to overcome in corporates, but also in governments, is more like a north-south line, as we have in Amsterdam, when you have to try to drill under a completely designed city that was never designed to have a metro from north to south. I think that's a bit the struggle that you need to overcome, but always try to take that human-centered design approach from the start. I think that is very critical when doing digital transformations.
Right.
Yeah, I have a sort of jumping on the topic of love. I have a bit of a hate-love relationship with sort of the modern AI systems. And I think there is sort of the concept of that if we start to, I think there is a big risk of centralization again. Because if you want to have the winning AI models, you have to have the most data, the most energy, and the most GPUs. And I think, unfortunately, I don't know how, but I don't see the right model to decentralize AI at the moment. It's computationally so expensive that you need, big resources. Personally, I love the language models. They help me in my research. They help our coders in our company to work efficiently. At the same time, I see an enormous concentration risk. So I think I like the value-centric design, the human-centric design of technology. At the same time, I think we should be sometimes restraining ourselves a little bit and not going in head over heels.
Right.
And that's, I think, maybe sort of, I'm an optimist. But I do think some tech changes are going a little bit too fast.
Right. Right. You see, of course, a lot of movement in that transformation from a technology-centric or service-centric or market-centric, and is it reflecting the whole in terms of an operating model, business model, organization model? But let's take there from a starting point, value, right? So you have, of course, some characteristics about it, right?
I think if we look to the page, Tom mentioning things are going too fast. I think if you look towards the scale that organizations try to keep up with the technology change, I think it's actually proven by the data. Because of organizations that are really trying to get value out of digital, out of tools like AI, but it can also be machine learning, it can also be automation of factories, of reusing different models to get better data for customers, for marketing and sales purposes. You see that a lot of people try it, but only 30% of the organizations actually succeed. So I recognize the fact that change is going very fast, and we live a little bit of in an exponential age. I think we used to be thinking about Moore's law when computational power was doubling every 2 years. If you're now saying that to youngsters, not like old people like myself, then Moore's law is something that is very old dated. Because if you now look at the rate of innovation, we don't talk linear anymore. We talk exponential. And then I think we could all wish that it slows down. But I think if we take a 30, 40, 50-year horizon, it has proven that it's only been accelerating. So if we now would assume that technology innovation will slow down, I think we are not realistic. It will only speed up. It will only go faster. So it's a little bit wishful thinking. I think that it will slow down. So we better anticipate and help organizations, governance, institutions, individuals, to actually learn to live in this new exponential age, right, because it will happen.
Right, and I got a little sense here about, is he referring to that we are older people, elder people?
I call myself old.
Are we young elder, or is he an elder youngster? What is happening here, right?
He's making a point here, but it's true, but I can add to that. There is, with the Moore's law, it has a physical constraint, and the innovation we see now is non-physical, and that's why it can be indeed exponential. And to add to the point of UPI, and is the whole idea of that the notion that having a sort of non-physical infrastructure for your digital economy is well executed, I think, in India already. And whereas in Europe, we are still struggling with this idea. It's way easier to get billions of money for a new railroad than for explaining let's more standardize legally and technically to create easier data sharing and secure data exchange, and while the investment is way lower for these type of things. So it's more of a coordination thing. So it's this whole idea of soft infrastructure. Hard infrastructure we can all see and touch, but soft infrastructure, and that is lacking. And suppose we would have that, then also business leaders, CIOs, and could way more easily integrate digital assets from outside into their operations, and then at the same time offer the assets they hold on their stakeholders to other parties, and then engage in all sorts of data exchange and privacy sensitive things. And
facilitate ecosystems, get new value journeys, etc., and then monetize. Right.
You do see that 70% of the tangible value, the railroads, is actually in the people can see. It's a new AI model, a new website, a new app, but it's cool because there you can shine with in a new boardroom. Right. But that is only 20% of the work. 80% of the work sits in defining that infrastructure. By the way, also 80% of the cost actually sits there, but it's less sexy. You can't touch it, you can't shine with it. But if you only do the cool, fancy, innovative stuff on the front end, it will at a certain moment inhibit your scaling potential. So you really need to look both in front and back end in order to make sure that you can live in a new world.
Yeah, but if you then take the one building block here, right? So let's say data strategy, right? So we are talking about the fundamentals, about your data strategy, about your governance, about the quality of your data, about the data sharing, etc., etc. So what we today see is that everybody hypes in terms of the monetizing with data, rather than sitting down in terms of what do I need within my factory, what do I need in my economy, what do I need in my society, what do you know?
100%.
Right? So is that a big problem?
Yeah, I think it is.
Holistic.
Yeah, I think there certainly is, and one needs to be very mindful of the fact that are you really looking at data sharing for monetizing or for democratization within an organization? A democratization of data within an organization, an enterprise itself is a big topic for many organizations. And it's also a good stepping stone towards, if you are able to share the data and democratize the data within your own organization, so that all your 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, or even 100 people are able to leverage that data. That's a stepping stone towards knowing and learning from your own mistakes, how then you monetize the data, right? Through external data sharing. So I think it's pretty imperative. And we were talking earlier about the compliance, right, and regulations. I have a feeling while we would want all that to slow down, but it's not going to slow down. I think so. And especially with things like generative AI coming into the picture, people are even talking of more guardrails, more compliancy, more privacy, right? So you never know. A GDPR for AI could even be launched, hypothetically, right? You don't know that, where we are heading. So I think we are living in this world where we have to really know our objective, not get swarmed away with a lot of things happening around us in terms of exponential growth of technology, in terms of all regulators and compliancy, and just knowing what we need and trying to create a path for our own. Otherwise, I think we are going to be buried under the avalanche of evolution happening around us.
Well, fun to see is that you have that discussion about the more guardrails you got, the more you will find yourselves in a position that you will go to a disaster. On the other hand, people will say, we need to have more, otherwise, from that unstructured to, well, let's say all kind of aspects here, with misuse, etc. We're going to a disaster, right? And as a human, we are going to a disaster because in the end, we will not grasp it anymore. So. Are we kind of stuck in the middle today because of this?
The whole problem is that if you want to make good guardrails, you need to really fundamentally understand the things, and that's, I think, the problem is you sort of we call this you're unconsciously unconscious about things,
right?
And that's often happening. There's so much talk about regulation even before we really know the nature of the beast, sort of thing. So and that can also be an inhibitor for innovation in the end, as we've seen in the past several times, where there was too early rules which only suppress certain symptoms but don't really go to the root of the cause.
Right.
I do think with GDPR, and I think sort of now these Digital Platforms Act in Europe, I think there we got it right. It's principle based. It has some anchored in some common values into law, and it gives a lot of flexibility to the operators or to the implementers to say, how am I going to stick to these principles? To your point, though, that makes it also very hard to be compliant, because you don't get the diagram of the car. You get sort of, these are the guardrails and just stay within these principles.
At the same time, the end user is not really served, right? And that is.
Yeah, I think there's also some, because we don't give it sort of cookie cut to someone, if you want to be compliant, this is the way to do it. That's why the GDPR was very hard to implement for some organizations. Yeah. Fortunately, now there's like techniques to do so. It's sort of, we can template things better, and because things were not templated, I think people were shy they didn't know where the risks and the boundaries were. But I do like that it actually, the GDPR gave you a lot of leeway and flexibility if you understood the principles.
Right. So to wrap it up, Nick, can you give a good piece of advice, right, to the viewers, especially in the context if it's data sharing or it's the new tech embracing or it's going into the value props, right? So what would be your piece of advice here, right?
Yeah. I think the piece of advice is recapping also what I've learned after this session. I think the technology is there, is one thing that I've learned. We have mechanisms or templates in place how we can set up a trust framework or a collaboration of individuals to actually work together to properly share data. But it's really about the leaders to make the choice to stand for a long-term sustained change in an organization, in a government, in a society. So let that be the call to action, that there cannot be an excuse that there's no technology or no framework or regulation. It's up to you, and then I'm looking into the camera, to really make the change happen.
And I guess to add a little love to that, right? and add a little love to that. I think that was a great one brought by my dear friend Fengi from Dubai. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to thank my guests. Thank you for this conversation. I think it was inspiring again. We've touched, and of course we went to the left and to the right a bit, but that's the show if you do unscripted, so to speak. Do I have anything to mention or announcement? Yes, of course. These are great topics. We will see also on CEO Day. And when is that? CEO Day will take place November 21st, and that will be the 19th editions already. So we're gonna have some great conversations there. I trust also about data sharing. Do I have to mention anything else? No. Later.